The signal that changed everything. First warning came as a whisper. God, it wasn't the blaring klaxons or flashing red lights, the Eritheri people associated with danger. It was a low, pulsing sound through the cum channel's 3 short bursts. A pause, then 3 more. It repeated again, steady, patient. On the bridge of the Catherine Dawn, Captain Talon Ree felt his fur prickle. That pattern, it wasn't Eritheri military code. It wasn't any known coalition signal dot. It was something new. Trace origin, Talon ordered, his voice calm but his 4 eyes fixed on a tactical display. His crew, all slender, feather-crusted Eritheri, moved quickly. Their talons tapped at glowing control panels. Lieutenant Vire tilted her head, crest feathers twitching nervously. Origin point, outer edge of the Northern Rift. No beacon, no ID signature. It's just there. The Rift. No one came out of the Rift. It was a graveyard of shattered fleets, the final resting place of entire civilizations lost to old wars. Talon's instincts screamed for caution. Broadcast standard contact greeting. See if it responds. Vire hesitated. Sir, it already has. That's the signal we're hearing. The bridge went silent. The thought settled like cold ash in Talon's gut. They weren't just hearing it by chance. It was meant for them. Half a galaxy away, deep in a hangar carved into the hull of an asteroid, a lone human sat on the edge of a metal crate. Tightening the seals on his EXO-suit. Commander Jacob Hale's face was lined and tired, but his hands were steady. The suit felt heavy more from the responsibility than the plating. Behind him, the lights of the hangar glinted off something vast, something angular and black, like a dagger carved out of midnight. The Vanguard. A ship unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. No graceful curves, no glowing energy sails, no broadcast beacon politely announcing its presence. It was designed for one thing, ending a fight before it began. Hale's voice was quiet as he spoke into his cum. This is Vanguard Actual. Transmission complete. Let's see who answers. On the Catherine Dawn, the mystery deepened. The signal shifted. From simple pulses, it became a stream of code foreign, but strangely structured. Their translation. I worked furiously, symbols dancing across the holodisplay, until, finally, words began to form. Talon leaned forward, reading aloud. This is Commander Jacob Hall, Terran Union Navy, seeking diplomatic contact. Will defend if threatened. Terran. Union? Vire's voice was barely a whisper. I've never heard of them. Nor had Talon. And in the Eritheri Coalition's vast stellar archives, that was nearly impossible. Every starfaring species was catalogued. Every known warship class logged. But this Terran ship was nowhere. The galaxy was a place where first contact was almost routine. But this was different. This was a warship emerging from a cursed sector, captained by a species no one knew, making a statement that was equal parts invitation and warning. Talon's instincts told him to turn away, to leave the rift and never look back. But his duty to his people, to the coalition, demanded he investigate. Set course to intercept, Talon said at last. The crew hesitated, feathers flattening in unease. But no one spoke against him. As the Catherine Dawn moved into the shadow of the rift, the cum crackled again. This time, the voice was clear, rough, deep, human. Unidentified vessel, you are entering a restricted perimeter. Identify yourself or be fired upon. The sound of it sent a chill through the bridge. Not just the words, the confidence. It was the voice of someone who knew they could make good on the threat. Talon swallowed. This is Captain Talon Ree of the Eritheri Coalition. We come in peace, but we will defend ourselves if provoked. There was a pause. Then the human's voice returned, quieter, almost tired. Captain, I hope for both our sakes you mean that. The vanguard came into view like a predator out of a dream. Even at extreme range, Talon could feel the weight of it. No ornate banners, no visible weapons, yet every line of its hull screamed war. It was smaller than most dreadnoughts, but denser, darker, like a thunderhead before a storm. Vyer's voice was tight. Sir, I'm reading power signatures far beyond Coalition warship norms. That thing shouldn't? It can't exist with current technology. Talon forced his gaze away from the display. Open a channel. Static filled the air, then Hale's voice again. Captain Ree, if you truly want peace, then turn around. The rift isn't safe for you. Talon's feathers bristled. With respect, Commander, the rift hasn't been safe for anyone in centuries. Why are you here? There was a long silence. Then, because something's coming through, and you don't want to be here when it arrives. The words hit the bridge like a thunderclap. Before Talon could respond, alarms blared. Vyer's eyes went wide. Multiple contacts, massive energy spikes. Something's opening a breach inside. The rift. Through the forward viewport, space itself seemed to tear. And something began to emerge. Talon stared. His breath caught in his throat. It wasn't just a ship. It was a swarm. Asterisk, the swarm. The breach widened like a wound in the fabric of space. From within, hundreds, no, thousands of dark, insectoid shapes poured out. They moved in coordinated clusters, wings of chitin and metal catching the dim starlight. Each one was the size of a fighter craft, their hulls glistening as if slick with oil. Their formations rippled like living currents, shifting without a sound. Lieutenant Vyer's voice cracked. Sir, those aren't ships. They're alive. Talon's gut twisted. The rift was a graveyard for a reason. Long ago, an apex predator had lived their machines fused with organic tissue, a perfect blend of biology and steel. The ancient records called them the Sylph. And here they were, swarming like a tidal wave. On the vanguard, Hale stood at the tactical display, jaw set. The swarm's size was worse than he'd feared. The Terran Union had never faced the Sylph directly, only remnants, scattered drones that had drifted out of the rift. This was their full force dot. He tapped his com. All batteries lock. Fire control on forward vectors. Shield resonance to maximum. This will get ugly fast. Beside him, his eye interface an orb of shifting light named Aegis flickered. Commander, probability of the Aerithary ship surviving this engagement without our intervention is below 2%. Hale didn't look up. Then we don't let them die. On the Catherine Dawn, panic rippled through the crew. They're coming straight for us. Vyer shouted. Talon slammed his hand against the com. Commander Howell, if you have any intention of proving you're not our enemy, now would be the time. For a heartbeat, there was nothing but static. Then Hale's voice, grim. Hold position. We'll handle the first wave. Talon started to protest, but his words caught in his throat. When the vanguard moved dot, it didn't glide like a coalition cruiser. It lunged out the vanguard's forward hull, split open in a sharp surgical motion, revealing banks of weapon ports sleek, unadorned. Deadly dot from them came no bright, streaming beams, no flashy plasma bolts. Instead, they were lances of pure, compressed energy, silent, white-hot, so focused they seemed to tear the very light around them. The first volley hit the swarm like a hammer. Dozens of Sylph drones exploded instantly, fragments scattering into nothingness. But more came. The swarm adjusted, spiraling and splitting into countless smaller groups, trying to surround the vanguard. Hale's ship twisted with an agility no warship should have, rotating on 3 axes at once, ventral thrusters firing in bursts that made it seem to dance between streams of incoming fire. Inside the Catherine Dawn, the crew watched in stunned Silence. Fire whispered, "That's not a warship. It's a predator." Talon forced his voice to stay level. "Stay focused. If they get past him, they'll come for us." The Sylph changed tactics. A dozen drones broke off, rushing toward the Catherine Dawn. Talon's crew scrambled, shields flaring under the first impacts. The deck shook. Panels sparked. Shields down to 73%. Someone shouted "dot" before Talon could issue an order. A shadow fell over their viewport. The Vanguard had placed itself directly between them and the incoming drones. Full broadside. Hawley commanded "dot." The Vanguard's flanks erupted in a wall of kinetic fire projectiles so fast they seemed like solid streams of metal. Every Sylph drone in the path was shredded. Aegis' voice was calm. Outer perimeter clear. Central mass of swarms still advancing. Hale's eyes narrowed. Time to end this. The Vanguard slowed, nose tilting toward the heart of the swarm. Panels on its dorsal hull slid back, revealing something unlike any coalition weapon. Vire stared at her scanner readouts. "Sir, I'm picking up an energy build, unlike anything I've ever..." A beam erupted from the Vanguard, not light, not plasma, but a twisting, spiraling column of unstable matter. It punched through the swarm like a spear through water, detonating. In a flash, it turned half the Sylph to drifting ash. The rest scattered. For the first time in living memory, the Sylph retreated, not to regroup, just gone. They vanished back into the rift, breach closing behind them. The silence afterward felt heavier than the battle itself. On the bridge of the Catherine Dawn, no one spoke for several seconds. Finally, Talon broke the quiet. "Commander Hawley." "What are you?" The human's voice came back, low and steady. "Someone who just saved your lives. And now, Captain, you're going to help me save everyone else's." The truth in the rift, the Vanguard drifted alongside the Catherine Dawn, its black hull still radiating faint heat from the battle. The two ships moved into a calmer pocket of space just outside the rift's turbulent edge. On the Catherine Dawn, Captain Talon stood in the cum room, his four eyes fixed on the human's image now flickering before him. Hale's face was hard, but his eyes dark and human held something heavier than victory. Talon's feathers ruffled. "You speak of saving others. Explain yourself." Hawley leaned forward slightly, as if the weight of what he was about to say required less distance. "What you saw today wasn't an attack. It was a scouting run." The words hung in the air. "Vyr, standing just behind Talon, hissed. "Those things nearly tore us apart. And you're saying that wasn't even a real strike?" Hale's jaw tightened. "The Sylph have been dormant for centuries, hibernating. Something's waking them up. When they come in force, there won't just be a swarm. There will be world eaters." Talon's feathers flattened against his skull. "You're saying this is an invasion?" Hawley didn't blink. "Not just an invasion. A purge." Vyre stepped forward, her voice sharp. "If what you say is true, why not warn the Galactic Council directly?" "Because they wouldn't believe me," Hawley said simply. He gestured vaguely behind him, where the faint outline of the Vanguard's bulkheads could be seen. "Do you have any idea how long it took us to build this ship? How many laws we had to break? The Terran Union operates on the edges of your maps, Captain. You don't know us, and your council doesn't trust ghosts." Talon frowned. "Then why me?" Hale's gaze was unflinching. "Because you came anyway. You got the signal, and instead of running, you set course to meet me. That means you're either the bravest captain in your fleet, or the most reckless." A faint smile ghosted across his lips. "I'm hoping for both." Talon didn't return the smile. "If you want my help, I need proof." Hawley nodded. "I thought you might say that. Prepare your crew for a jump. I'm taking you inside the rift." The rift was not a place for the living. Its interior was a maze of distorted light and gravitational traps, where wreckage from 100 wars drifted like bones in a cosmic grave. The Vanguard led, its black hull cutting through turbulence with unnatural precision. The Catherine Dawn followed, shields flaring as they brushed the edges of space-time eddies that could tear a ship apart. Inside, the void was not black. It was a deep crimson haze, the residue of ancient stellar detonations. Fragments of ships, some massive enough to be cities, floated in eerie silence. Talon's voice was quiet, as if the place demanded it. "This is a battlefield." "More like a burial ground," Holly replied, overcomes. His tone shifted, becoming colder. "And you're about to see who's been digging up the dead." The Vanguard banked sharply, guiding them toward a jagged asteroid cluster. Beyond it lay something that made Vyer's talons tighten on the railing dot. It was a Sylph construct massive, pulsing with faint bioluminescent veins, shaped like a great spire driven into the void. Around it swarmed hundreds of the smaller drones, welding and weaving strands of metallic chitin. Vyer's voice trembled. "They're building something." "Not building," Halle corrected. "Growing." The closer they drew, the more detail emerged. The structure's walls weren't solid. They writhed, reshaping themselves in slow, unsettling waves. Along the base were massive, gaping maws tunnels large enough for a dreadnought to pass through. Hale's voice came through again, grim. "That's a birthing spire. When it's finished, it will release a fleet bigger than the combined navies of every civilized world. And this is just one." Talon's eyes narrowed. "How many are there?" Halle didn't hesitate. "We've confirmed at least 5. There are probably more." Vyer looked at the readings on her console. "Captain, the energy signature is increasing. Something's activating inside." Hale's tone sharpened instantly. "Pull back, now." The spire trembled. From its upper section, a seam split open, and a single shape began to emerge. At first, Talon thought it was another drone, until he saw the scale. This was no fighter. It was colossal, a war form the size of a city, bristling with weapons that looked grown rather than built. Talon's feathers bristled. "What in the name of the stars is that?" Hale's answer was low and grim. "That is a Sylph warlord, one of the oldest predators in the rift, and it just saw us." The war form turned its massive head, eyes like molten amber locking onto their position. Its wings unfurled with a soundless ripple, and the space between them seemed to bend. Vyer's voice broke into a shout. "It's charging weapons. Full burn," Talon ordered, his crew scrambling. The Catherine Dawn lurched, engines roaring. But the war form was fast, too fast. On the Vanguard, Hale's voice cut through the comms like a blade. "Stay behind me. Whatever happens, do not break formation." The warform opened fire lances of molten plasma cutting through the rift, and the Vanguard charged straight at it. Asterisk the Predator's gambit, the Warlord's plasma lances tore the void apart. Each shot a molten spear that could gut a battleship. The Vanguard rolled into the attack instead of away from it, an insane move by any fleet standard dot from the Catherine Dawn. Talon's crew watched in disbelief as the human warship's hull seemed to shimmer, light bending strangely around it. The first plasma lance struck and simply vanished, dispersing into harmless sparks against a barely visible distortion field. Vyer's jaw dropped. That wasn't a shield. "I don't even know what that was." Talon said nothing. His eyes were fixed on the human ship as it accelerated, a black arrow against the rift's red haze. Inside the Vanguard, Halle stood at the command console, fingers dancing across holographic controls. Aegis, deploy Hunter's Veil. Veil. Active, the AI's calm voice replied. Enemy targeting solutions disrupted by 73%. Warning, energy drain is significant. Doesn't matter, Halle muttered. We end this fast. The warlord roared not in sound, but in the psychic resonance that vibrated through the rift. Every drone around the spire shifted formation, moving to intercept the vanguard. "Here they come," Aegis noted. "Good," Hala said grimly. "Arm the spear." Panels along the vanguard's spine slid open, revealing a sleek, needle-shaped weapon glowing faintly with a swirling blue-white core. It wasn't aimed at the drones. It was locked directly on the warlord. The drones closed in first, clawing at the vanguard's flanks, but the human ship moved like a living thing, weaving through them with bursts of thruster fire and precise railgun bursts that shattered attackers mid-flight. Hale's voice was low and steady. "On my mark?" From the Catherine dawn, it was like watching a lone wolf leap into a pack of predators. Every movement of the vanguard was precise, purposeful. Vyre gripped her console hard enough for her claws to scrape the metal. "If they miss that shot, we're dead." Talon's feathers twitched. "If they hit, we may still be dead." The warlord reared back, charging a massive energy pulse in the glowing maw beneath its jagged skull. Hale's targeting reticle locked. Mark. The spear fired. It wasn't light. It wasn't plasma. It was a sliver of collapsed matter, encased in a containment. Field pure mass compressed into a spike. The size of a shuttle dot crossed the distance in less than a second. The warlord's head snapped back as the spear punched straight through it, ripping a hole clean through its armored skull. A shockwave rippled out, tearing nearby drones apart. The massive creature shuddered, its molten eyes flickering, then dimming. It drifted, lifeless, the rift's haze swallowing it whole. The battlefield went silent. No more drones came. The spire itself seemed to retreat, folding in on itself, vanishing into the rift's crimson fog. On the Catherine dawn, Talon finally exhaled. "It's over." Hale's voice came over comms, flat. "No, Captain. That was just one." Talon turned sharply toward the display. "You mean there are more of those things?" "At least 4 more, Hale said. "And they're waking faster than we thought. We have months, maybe less, before they're ready to leave the rift." Vyre looked between them, feathers puffed. "In agitation. Then what's your plan? You can't fight all of them with one ship." Hale's lips curled into a faint, humorless smile. "That's why I called you." The 2 ships regrouped outside the rift, battered but intact. Hale sent a data packet to Talon's command, a compressed, heavily encrypted file. Inside was intelligence, movement patterns, energy readings, structural data on the birthing spires. Enough to make any coalition strategist sit up in alarm. Scrolled through the file, his frown deepening. This changes everything." "Good," Hale said. "Because we're going to need everyone." Talon straightened. "You mean to go to the council?" "Yes," Hale replied. "And you're going to introduce me." Vyre stared. The council will never trust him. They barely trust each other. Hale's eyes were cold and certain. "Then we'll make them trust me. Or we'll make them too. Afraid to ignore me." As the Catherine dawn set a course toward the coalition capital, Talon couldn't shake a gnawing thought. Hale was undeniably a warrior. But the vanguard was a weapon too powerful for any one species to hold. And if the council decided humans were as dangerous as the Sylph, the council's judgment, the coalition capital, Vera Prime, was a city world wrapped in a glittering shield of pale blue light. From orbit, the surface shimmered like a jewel-vast oceans broken by sprawling megacities, their towers stretching. Into the clouds the Catherine dawn, and the vanguard descended together, 2 ships that could not have been more different, one sleek and silver, the other a black dagger. Even before landing, the political tension was palpable. Vyre muttered as she scanned incoming transmissions. "The council's in an uproar. Half of them want to know what you are, Commander. The other half wants you arrested the moment you set foot on Vera Prime. Hawley didn't flinch. Sounds about right. Inside the council chamber, the air was thick with heat and voices. Representatives of a dozen species filled the great circular hall, their voices rising in overlapping debates. The Arythari delegation took their place, Talon at the center. Hall stood just behind him, helmet off, the human's dark eyes sweeping the room with quiet calculation. The High Speaker, an elder Korath with translucent skin and veins glowing faintly, struck the floor with his ceremonial staff. Order! We are here to discuss the arrival of an unregistered vessel and its human captain. Captain Talon Ree, you may speak. Talon stepped forward. This human warship, the Vanguard, saved my ship and crew from an overwhelming Sylph incursion inside the Narthan Rift. At the mention of the Sylph, the chamber grew quieter, uneasy shifting, feathers ruffling, mandibles clicking. The High Speaker frowned. The Sylph have not been seen in centuries. Are you claiming they have returned? I am not claiming, Talon said. I am reporting. He gestured to Hawley. This is Commander Jacob Hawley, Terran Union Navy. He has intelligence you need to hear. Hawley stepped forward, his voice carrying easily across the chamber. I'm not here for politics. I'm here because you're about to face something your fleets aren't ready for. A ripple of irritation passed through the council seats. The Jorlan delegate, a tall insectoid with jeweled carapace, clicked his mandibles sharply. Your arrogance is noted, human. We have faced threats before. Not like this, Hawley said flatly. He projected the footage. The chamber's central, hollow bloomed with images from the rift-endless swarms, the birthing spire, the warlord. The gasps were genuine. This is one spire, Hawley said. There are more. In less than a year, the Sylph will push beyond the rift in force. And if you meet them with your current fleet doctrine, they'll crush you. The High Speaker leaned forward. And you, human, have a way to stop them? Hale's gaze was unyielding. I have a plan, but I need your fleets, your resources, and your trust. The chamber erupted. Some shouted support. Others demanded his removal. One voice cut through the chaos. The Jorlan delegate again. Or, we take your ship and your technology by force. Hale's jaw tightened. Try it. The tension in the room spiked like a live wire. Before the High Speaker could restore order, an aide rushed into the chamber, feathers slicked with sweat. High Speaker, there's been an incursion. The room froze. A Sylph swarm. The aide continued breathlessly. It's breached the Kyril system's perimeter. Capital defense fleets are mobilizing. The High Speaker turned sharply to Talon and Hal. Kyril is only 3 jumps from here. Hale's voice was cold steel. Then let's move. Minutes later, the Vanguard tore back into space. The Ketharin dawn closed behind. The Council's fleets were still scrambling, too slow, too disorganized. By the time Hawley arrived in the Asse Kyril system, the swarm was already tearing apart orbital platforms. Targeting priority. Largest threat cluster. Hawley ordered. The Vanguard's guns lit up the darkness. From the Council's observation ship, dozens of delegates watched the battle on live holofeed. They saw the Vanguard's weapons rip through the swarm with surgical precision, saw the impossible agility of a ship that fought like a predator, and they saw something else. Hawley deliberately placing the Vanguard between the swarm and a crippled refugee transport. Taking fire meant for others. The Jorlan delegate stared, his jeweled carapace shifting. Color in thought. When the swarm finally broke and fled, the delegates had seen enough. Back in the chamber, the High Speaker's voice was quiet but firm. Commander Hal, you have our attention. Hawley inclined his head slightly. Good, because now we start planning for war. Asterisk shadows behind the Rift War had a smell. On Vera, Prime, it was the tongue of hot metal from forges, working day and night. the faint chemical bite of fuel reserves being stockpiled, and the ozone scent of shield generators humming at full output. The Coalition had mobilized faster than anyone thought possible. The Aerithary fleets trained alongside human crews from the vanguard. Designs for new weapons were shared cautiously, piece by piece, but beneath the urgency, tension coiled like a hidden blade. Hal stood in a dimly lit hangar bay aboard the Vanguard, watching a team of Aerithary engineers inspect one of the ship's auxiliary railguns. Talon approached from behind, his crest feathers low in thought. "They're nervous," the captain said. "Your technology, it's decades ahead of anything we've built." "They should be nervous," Hale replied, not looking up. "The wrong hands could do a lot of damage with it." Talon gave him a sidelong glance. "And you think ours might be the wrong hands?" Hale finally looked at him. "I think desperation makes people dangerous." That night, danger proved him right. A silent alert from Aegis pulled Hale from sleep security breach in weapons storage. By the time he reached the vault, 2 figures in Coalition Navy uniforms were already inside, attempting to download data from a sealed weapons core. Hale didn't shout. He didn't warn them. 2 steps, a flick of his wrist, and both intruders were on the ground, their stolen datapads smashed against the wall. Talon arrived moments later, breath tight. "Their council intelligence." Hale's voice was icy. "Then your council is already deciding how to fight us after the Sylph are gone." The next day, Hale confronted the High Speaker privately. "You have a leak in your own war room. If you want me to keep cooperating, you shut it down." The High Speaker's translucent features gave no hint of emotion. "Commander Hal, the Coalition is a union of many worlds. Not all believe in trust without oversight." Hale's glare was unblinking. "Then make them believe, or we all die." Meanwhile, deep inside the rift, something was stirring. A scouting probe small, stealth-equipped slipped through a Sylph patrol and recorded something no one expected. The footage reached Hale and Talon within hours, not just spires, stations, massive. Constructs, bristling with weapons, and docking ports, not Sylph designs. And on their hulls, markings. Coalition markings. Talon's feathers bristled. "That's impossible. No one's been inside the rift in centuries." Hale's jaw clenched. "Someone has. And they've been working with the Sylph." Vire stared at the frozen hollow image. "Why would anyone ally with that power?" Hale said. "If the Sylph wipe out half the galaxy, whoever's left holding their leash controls the rest." The revelation hit the council like a thunderclap. Delegates accused one another, old grudges resurfacing, alliances fraying. Meanwhile, the Sylph's advance accelerated raids on outer colonies. Harvester fleets stripping planets bare in hours. Hale didn't wait for politics to settle. He assembled a strike team, half human, half Aerithary, preparing to enter the rift and destroy one of the hybrid stations before it could be completed. Talon insisted on coming. "You need someone the Coalition trusts, or they'll call this an assassination." Hale didn't argue. The Vanguard slipped into the rift under a cloak of sensor distortion, weaving through debris fields and ancient wreckage until the hybrid station loomed ahead. It was monstrous Sylph organic growth fused with Coalition alloy plating. Defense turrets grafted like tumors along its length. Docked at its side was a ship Hale recognized instantly. "Coalition Dreadnought," he muttered. "Stolen or sold." Talon's crest rose. "That ship vanished 2 years ago on a patrol near the rift." "Looks like it didn't vanish," Hale said grimly. They were closing in when Aegis spoke. "Commander, we're being painted by long-range targeting systems." Hale's fingers tightened on the console. "They see us?" "Affirmative, and they are powering main batteries." The hybrid station began to turn, massive biomechanical. Thrusters pushing it into attack position. From the shadows, Sylph swarms erupted like hornets from a nest. Talon's voice was tight. "We can't take that many. We're not here for a stand-up fight." Hala cut him off. "We're here to cut the head off the snake." The vanguard dove, thrusters flaring, straight toward the station's glowing central core. Weapons fire filled the void plasma, railgun slugs, biospines the size of shuttles. The human warship danced through them all, shields flaring, armor groaning under the strain. Aegis' voice was calm but urgent. Structural integrity falling. Below optimal parameters. Recommend disengage. "Not yet," Halle growled. The station's core swelled with light, energy building to catastrophic levels. Talon realized too late what was happening. They're going to overload it, turn the whole thing into a bomb. The warship's answer, the hybrid station's core pulsed like a dying star, light spilling into the rift's crimson haze. If it detonated, the shockwave would tear through subspace, obliterating both the Vanguard and the Ketherindon, and collapsing nearby jump routes for decades. Hale's voice was a blade. "Aegis, target the core's stabilizers. Overload them before the charge peaks." "Warning," the AI replied evenly. "Destabilizing the stabilizers may cause premature detonation." "That's the point," Halle growled. "We blow it before it reaches full output. Smaller boom, no subspace rupture." Talon's voice cut in over Combs. "You're gambling with our lives now." Halle didn't look at the display. "No, Captain. I'm betting mine to save yours." The Vanguard dove under a sweeping arc of plasma fire, railguns shredding two Sylph drones that tried to latch onto the hull. Inside, crew braced against the jarring impacts as the warship wove through the storm. On the tactical display, the station's stabilizers glowed like four massive spines protruding from the core's heart. Hull pointed. "All batteries fire." For effect, the first spine shattered under a focused barrage, fragments spinning away into the void. The second went seconds later, detonating in a flare of molten metal and charred chitin. But the third was shielded by a massive Sylph Guardian part battleship, part living fortress. Talon's voice crackled. "That thing will hold you off long enough for the charge to peak." Hale's lips curled into a humorless grin. "Not if I ram it." The Vanguard surged forward, slamming into the Guardian's flank with a bone-shaking impact. Hull plating screamed in protest, but the Guardian spun away, crippled. The railgun spoke again, punching through the third stabilizer. "One left," Hall barked. Aegis' voice sharpened. "Commander energy levels in the core have reached critical threshold. 30 seconds to uncontrolled detonation." The Vanguard spun hard toward the final spine. Sylph fire raked across the bow, sending sparks cascading through the bridge. Warning lights bathed Halle in red. "Lock it in!" He shouted. The last stabilizer exploded in a blinding flash. The chain reaction was instantaneous. The hybrid station's core convulsed, collapsing inward before erupting in a wave of light that ripped through the rift. Sylph drones disintegrated mid-flight, their organic metal frames curling into ash. The shockwaves slammed into the Vanguard, hurling it clear. Armor buckled, but the ship held. When the light faded, nothing remained of the station, but drifting fragments. Silence. Then Talon's voice came through, low but steady. "You're alive." "Mostly," Halle replied. He looked around at his battered bridge crew, their faces smeared with soot but unbroken. "That'll have to do." Back on Vera Prime, the destruction of the hybrid station spread through the Council like wildfire. Footage of the Vanguard's charge played on every news channel in the Coalition. An alien warship unlike any they'd seen, piloted by a human, who'd flown straight into death and come back with victory. For the first time, the Council's factions spoke with one voice. The Sylph were no longer a rumor. The Terran Union was no longer a ghost dot at a closed session. The High Speaker addressed Hall directly. Commander Jacob Howe, the Coalition formally requests an alliance with the Terran Union. You will have fleets, resources, and command authority in the Rift Theater. Hale's response was simple. Good, because we're not done yet. As he left the chamber, Talon caught up with him. You know they'll never fully trust you. Hale gave a faint, tired smile. Trust's not the point, Captain. Survival is. Out beyond the capital's shield, the Vanguard hung in orbits guard, blackened, but still whole. And somewhere deep in the rift, the remaining spires pulsed in the darkness, waiting. Hale looked out at the stars. They've had their first taste of what we can do. Let's make sure they never forget it.